In this second video of the series on survey data import and processing, we're going to consider the data viewing options available. These viewing tools are quite useful to have available or visible when processing data in general, or particularly when troubleshooting data if problems occur. So in this video we're going to utilize the Project Explorer, Properties pane, the Warnings or the Flags pane, the View Filter Manager, the 3D Viewing tool, and the spreadsheets, the Optical Spreadsheet and the Vector Spreadsheet. So let's have a look at these in TBC now. Notice here on the left hand side of the screen I have a tool open called the Project Explorer, and actually tabbed behind it I have a second one open called the View Filter Manager. They'll live side by side over on the left if you have them both open, and I have mine pinned open, although you can change this so they're automatically hidden when not in use. The Project Explorer, as the name would suggest, allows us to explore the contents of the project in a Explorer style tree list. When we have data in the project of certain types, then headings will be created for those data types. And we can see here we've got some points listed, some references to some media files, and an imported files section. There's always an imported files section, and under here we'll see data that's been imported into the project. So the Project Explorer is a very useful tool for looking at information relating to points and other data types. When you look in the list and you see an item present, of course clicking on it will select it, and if the properties panel is open, as this one is here, then the properties of that particular object will display. If you should see a small triangle or arrow symbol like this, it means that there's more information available below the headline. So we can click here and then we can see a whole host of information shown. So in this video I'm not going to go into detail as to what all the particular data types are, or observation types that you might see listed in the Project Explorer. They're pretty intuitive. We'll consider some of them specifically in the next video. Suffice to say, just looking at this without knowing anything about the data set beforehand necessarily, we can see that there's a face left total station observation here. I can tell it's face left because the left side of this cross is shaded in, and I can see which station the observation was made from, which corresponds with the headline point name, and the name of the point that was measured, and the observation number within the survey. So surveyed point reference TA89 on this one. Here we can see a different symbol. This would indicate a different type of measurement in this case, and if I look in here I can see that this is again a total station observation, but an observation with an offset applied to the measurement. We can see the offset values here. So I'm just going to close up the point section and highlight the imported files section, because particularly when troubleshooting data, this is a very good area to go and see what's happening. Essentially in this area you can read down the imported survey data and read pretty much what happened in the field. So here I can see there's a point name here and a GNSS reference, so that's with the coordinate for this base point here. And if I expand out here we can see a lot of RTK vectors showing, measured from that base. It might be a VRS base station in this case, given the name. And each observation, like the total station observation we saw a moment ago, has a unique reference. So these RTK vectors, these observations begin with a V as opposed to a T, as they were with the total station observations. again, it's possible to click on any one of these and see properties in more detail of the observation selected. For example, the number of sats, epochs, and the tilt information. This was a receiver that supported tilting. Up here, dot values and precision values, showing to 4 decimal places in this case. So more information therein. And critically, we can see this observation is enabled. So a coordinate is being computed from that observation in the dataset, or it's contributing to the computation of a coordinate. It's possible in here to disable observations and to set them to have a check status rather than fully enabled. So looking at this dataset, I can see that it's begun with a VRS GNSS survey before proceeding to a station setup, the tilt station. You can see the point name that the instrument was set over was a single backside type measurement. So again, we have coordinates here for a station position and a backside coordinate here. And then looking further down, we can see observations that have been made to the backside point. So again, we've got a face left and a face right measurement, and then the meaning of those two angle and distance measurements, and again another face left and a face right, and again a mean set of angles and distances relating to these measurements. So these mean angles results, they have a different reference, so they're not T's, they're not V's. These have an M at the beginning, an M suffix to indicate the order of these mean measurements, or these means rounds of angles potentially in the project. So there we go, that's the Project Explorer, particularly the imported file section. If you see a survey, or you've imported a survey file in here, you can pretty much read down the data and see what has been observed and in what sequence in the file. So the start of the survey is at the top, and the end of the survey will be down the bottom here. Okay, you can see this is quite a relatively large data set, this one that we have showing. So the properties dialog, of course, acts as a general properties dialog as in most CAD style software, but it does work hand in glove with the Project Explorer. So you can dig in, click on a piece of information and see more information about that measurement or that data from the Project Explorer in the Properties panel. Down here at the bottom, I have opened the flags window, or the flags pane. It's kind of a warnings dialog box. Again, its purpose is pretty elemental. It shows us errors and warnings indicated by red or yellow flags, considering the severity of the particular problem, as listed in order of the data that's been read in. So entries near the top are likely to be earlier in the survey data than entries perhaps a bit further down. And particularly when data processing, of course, we'd like to resolve any issues, any errors, deal with any warnings before proceeding further with the processing. So in the next video in particular, we'll be looking at how we deal with some of these flags and what they might mean. But it's a very useful panel to have open in the early stages of processing in particular. It can be closed up and reopened using the little flag button at the base of the screen here. Let's move across to the left again the View Filter Manager, a very useful tool for filtering the information that's shown in the screen. It doubles really as a CAD layer manager in some respects in terms of data visibility, in as much as layer visibility can be turned on and off using the tick boxes here, and there's also an advanced view filter dialog here, which gives a bit more control in as much as you can make layers visible but the data not selectable if you wish, using this option too. So I'll close that dialog. The view filters have a name, so any changes that are made to a view filter can be saved and reused over in the project again if needed, or indeed additional view filters can be applied to additional viewing panes. So let's have a see and a look as to what that means. So the RTK vectors, these are the blue lines here, and there's also lots of total station observations in this data set as well. So in addition to layers, it's possible to turn data on and off in the display by type. So RTK vectors, we'll turn off the RTK vectors, and zooming into the area down here, you can see all these green radial lines. These are total station observations, so these can be turned off as well. So the screen looks rather cluttered at the moment. Sometimes less is more when processing data, particularly when troubleshooting in early phases. So it's possible to turn off more information than what's shown in the top half here using some of these tick boxes in the lower half. So we can turn off point IDs, for instance, which in this data set will clear up the view quite a lot. Now it's possible when we hover over information in the survey that we'll see perhaps the information that would have been shown with these tick boxes anyway. So it's not always critical to have these things turned on. Unticking total station from the list here will turn off all of those green lines showing the total station measurements. However, what we can do is move on to the observations tab, and we can see here a few more options, whether to show all observations or just enabled observations only. We saw where observations or measurements could be enabled and disabled using the properties dialog. But there's also a tick box here to show side shot observations. If we untick these, a lot of the green lines again will disappear. So we haven't turned off all of the total station observations, just the side shots, leaving these sort of lime coloured lines which represent multiple observations, so mean angle results from multiple observations, which again at a troubleshooting phase you may wish to have turned on before ultimately turning off all the total station lines once all the initial data processing has been completed and all the checks have been made. Just to illustrate the concept of utilizing multiple views, I can turn all of these side shot observations back on. So we've got RTK vectors showing and all the total station observations. What I'll do though is make a copy of the current view filter. Okay, I'm going to prompt for a name. Give it a name here. Once it's created, I'm going to turn off or untick the RTK vectors and the total station observation lines from here, and can see that the view filter name has updated to reflect the currently active view filter. We open another plan view. Okay, the same view filters being applied. You see that here, the view filter name adjacent to the view name. So perhaps for the original plan view, I've got the tab selected at the top here. I can go into my view filter list and I can select an alternative view filter. So simultaneously I can view the data with my custom filter applied or with a different or alternative view filter applied. And this extends to the 3D view as well. So I open a 3D view. Again, the name of the view filter to apply to the view is shown at the top. It's the last one created in this case, the custom one with the vector lines and the total station lines absent. So again, creating different view filters showing different bits of information can be quite useful in the early stages of data processing. Perhaps not so much at the checking stage, but perhaps for later stages of processing, there are options in here where you can right click and view only particular layers, or once this option is selected, perform an invert to view the other layers apart from the one that was previously selected. Now, if I turn these all on, there's only 3 layers here. There's no drafting taken place yet with a code library. So it's pretty much raw data we're looking at. But there's also an isolate button here, this one with the yellow top to the cube amongst the functions at the top of the screen. And with the isolate function, you can then click on any layer in the layers list to view the data from that layer in isolation, and a tap on the button to turn the isolate function off again. So the view filter manager can be a particularly useful tool when trying to examine the data and see what's happening by turning on and off various elements in the graphics view. The 3D view we saw briefly. There are additional 3D view settings located under the large 3D view button on the home ribbon, and here it's possible to inspect the data from various orientations, and that in itself can be a useful way for quickly checking for any spurious levels or perhaps points with null elevation or points that aren't sitting where perhaps given the survey data you might expect them to be sitting elevation wise. Moving on to the spreadsheets. The spreadsheets are launched from the home ribbon again. There's a variety of spreadsheets over here. When it comes to data processing and checking data, there are 2 spreadsheets in particular. I'm talking about general survey data here, so total station and GNSS information in the main. We've got the optical spreadsheet. We saw the optical spreadsheet in the previous video, how we could turn on, using the project settings, additional columns of information in the spreadsheet, or indeed turn off superfluous columns that might not be of immediate interest. But it is possible to use these spreadsheets in a troubleshooting capacity. For example, it's possible to filter the contents of a table. We have here a column for the raw target height, a little filter symbol at the top here, as there are at the top of all the columns. So all the columns can be filtered to show information required. Let's have a look at this one as an example. We can create a custom filter either to meet all of the conditions that we create here or any of them. So for example, we could ask to see any target heights that are greater than, let's say, 2.3 meters, and any that might be perhaps less than 0. The sort of values that you wouldn't expect to see terribly often in a normal survey, topographic survey data set. So having created that filter, we can see that there are indeed observations that do not fit with those parameters, and we can see total station observations. We know this, there's a T at the beginning of the observation ID, so it's a total station observation. We're in the optical spreadsheet, that much would make sense. We can see all the observation data here, and the target height that's been used on these points is 2.55 meters. Some here observations made at 2.5. Scrolling down, we can see all the way at the bottom here 2.5. So there are observations in here that exceed that 2.3 meter threshold, and we can also see that there are none that are below 0. Again, as we would expect, we wouldn't expect to see any target heights with a minus on them, which indeed is the case. All of these columns can be sorted in order of magnitude, so clicking on the column heading, we can go large to small and small to large by sorting and filtering in this manner. To turn a filter off, just click on the filter symbol and change the status back to all to show all data. And we can see data in observation ID order by using the column heading here, clicking on the column heading, so we're starting at observation T1, again now going down through the survey in order of the total station observations. So the optical spreadsheet, quite useful for doing general checks on some of the issues that might contribute to systematic errors, such as prism type used, prism constants, checking for spurious target heights or instrument setup heights, or indeed checking for disabled observations in the data. The vector spreadsheet is very similar in nature. Close this one up. Let's close up a couple of these, give us a bit more room back here, and shows similar information but for the RTK observations present in the data. For instance here, perhaps to sort by horizontal and vertical precision values, I can just sort the column here by ordering, so small to large. If I click again, we're going large to small. We can see that observation ID V20 has a vertical precision of 22.5 mil. That looks like the highest in the data set, and a horizontal precision of 18 mil. Okay, so those are the main views and permutations that relate to those views, such as creating new view filters, the 3D view settings, etc., that can be used in conjunction with the data processing, particularly when troubleshooting data or when processing data in the early stages, and extra views on the data are required in order to resolve issues. Those are the ones that I go to. If you have any comments, queries or questions about the viewing options shown in this video, please get in touch with ourselves on the information shown on the slide, support@cartgroup.com, or the UK number 01519316700 will take you straight into our support department. There's no switchboard, that is the direct dial number straight into the team, who would be happy to assist. So thank you very much for watching.